So, last time we stopped at a point where we were talking about the important questions faced by any individual or an economy, right, of what to produce, how much to produce, for whom to produce, and then how do these goods and services get distributed. Remember? Yes, we stopped at that point, those 4 questions. Now, irrespective of the nature of the economy, irrespective of what kind of country you live in, all economies, all countries face these 4 important economic questions. Okay? So, then the next question that arises is, why do countries, why do economies have to face this question? Why can't they just produce whatever they want, how much ever they want, for whoever they want, right? And why do they need to care for the distribution of these goods? Okay? That leads us to the principles, the fundamental principles of economics. Okay? So, in today's class, which is from your lecture note 1 posted in the lecture notes folder in Blackboard, we are going to start looking at the basic principles in economics. And there is, we cannot really group these principles into micro or macro. Some principles may be more relevant for microeconomics, while others may be more relevant for macro, but these principles are like the bedrock, they are like the foundation of economics. Okay? So, to answer, as you can understand, when we are looking at those 4 questions, what to produce, how much to produce, these are like important decisions being taken, right? When a government is trying to answer these questions, they have to decide on something. What should I produce? That is a decision. How much should I produce? That is a decision, right? That means at the crux of these 4 important economic questions is something called decision or choice. And that itself is the first principle of economics. So, the first principle states that every individual, every economic agent, every government is faced by decision making or has to make a choice at every point in time. Okay? And if you think about it, you are doing it all the time. Every time you do something, you are taking a decision, you are making a choice. Right? Now, why do you have to make a choice? You have to make a choice because the resources around you are not in abundance or plenty. You do not have abundance of everything. Rather, what you have is scarcity of resources. So, choices have to be made for scarcity. Okay? And scarcity of what? Scarcity of resources. What do I mean by resources? Resources is anything, a resource is anything that can be put to a productive use, that can be used for production. That is called a resource. In some textbooks, a resource is also called an input, sometimes also called an intermediary good. Intermediate or intermediary good. Different terminologies can be used in different books, but mostly the most common terminology is a resource. So, resource is anything that you can think of under the sun that can be used for production of a good or a service. Now, these resources, we categorize them into 4 major categories. The first is land. Second is capital, labor, and organization. So, when you think about a production process and any resource or input that goes into the production process to produce an output, to produce a good or a service, you can group those resources into one of those 4 categories. Okay? Now, what is land? Literal meaning, a piece of land, real estate, where you are going to build your production unit, okay? You are going to make your factory or your warehouse, the piece of land, very literal meaning. Okay? What is capital? Now, capital can be 2 things. Firstly, it can be physical capital and I will tell you what it means, or it can be human capital. What are examples of physical capital? Physical capital are anything like equipments, machinery, okay, your warehouses, factories, sheds. These are all physical capital. Whereas human capital here are the workers, people you have to hire along with physical capital for the production process. So, if you just buy machines, those are not enough, right? You need at least someone to run those machines or maintain those machines, right? Look after those machines. So, always when you think about capital, there may be two aspects of capital. One is the plant, machineries, equipments, etc., and the other part is the human aspect, human capital. So, that means you can realize that human capital is kind of similar to labor. It means the workers, isn't it? It is a similar concept. But why are we calling it capital and not calling it labor? Why are we not just putting human capital here? Rather, why are we putting it here? We are putting it here because there is a distinction between capital and labor. There is some difference between when you call a resource capital or when you call it labor. And what is that distinction? The distinction is that anything which is called capital is subjected to depreciation. It can wear and tear. It needs maintenance over time. If you buy a machine today, after 10 years, it will not work at the same capacity. There will be depreciation of the machine. Similarly, if you think about human capital, over time there can be improvement in the capital. How? Let us say a worker starts working today with a high school degree. Over 5 years, he may get a college degree, might get a graduate degree. That person might get some professional training or some on-job experience, which makes him qualitatively a better worker. So, that means the capital or the worker that started working is improving over time, gaining skills, qualitatively becoming better. Do you see? That kind of sets the difference between a capital and labor. Capital is the resource which can depreciate or improve over time depending on the situation, okay. Whereas labor is just, we are talking about the workers who work in the production process for some wages, and sometimes something more than wages, which are fringe benefits and stuff. We are not going to go into those details. Now, my question to you is, do you think human capital can depreciate over time? How? One person answer first. Yes. Exactly. So, human capital depreciates because they can get older or they can get sick over time, and hence they might also need maintenance. They might need to take more sick days, right? They might need medical treatment, right? So, human capital may also be subjected to depreciation, but we do not really use this terminology depreciation in the case of human capital. We use it more for physical capital in economics, and if you ask me why is it so, there is no precise answer to that. That is just how it is, okay. So, labor, you understood, it is just the workers who work for wages and some benefits. What is organization? Organization is the entrepreneur himself. That means the strategy or the managerial skill that goes into production. It is not just enough to have workers, and it is not just enough to have machines. Somebody must decide in what ratio they must be used in the production process for maximum production, right. So, it is the managerial skill or strategy that goes into a production process. Now, for simplicity in economics, in basic fundamental level economics, we do not consider these 4 things. Rather, we kind of make them concise and we say there are only 2 resources, that is capital, which is denoted by capital K in economics, and there is labor, which is denoted by capital L. So, that means under capital L we consider the workers, whereas everything else, that means physical capital, land and organization, gets clubbed together under capital K. Okay? This we are doing just for simplicity. For simplicity, we are just saying that there are two resources, labor and capital. And under K, you have land, you also have organization. Is that okay? Do you have any questions? Okay. Yes?
The video talked about time as a resource, so where would that fall into this?
Time is also a resource. Where do you think that should go?
Maybe organization?
Time is a resource. We really, we don't bring this in this setup, but we put time under capital. Okay? But yeah, very good. Time is a resource for sure. Okay. So now that is the second principle. Now the third principle, so we said, okay, fine. Individuals and governments have to make choices, and they have to make choices because there is scarcity of resources. Resources are not in abundance. Now the third principle tells us that if you have to make a choice, if you have to pick something, if you have to pick A, then when you pick A, you have to give up something else. You have to leave B, you have to sacrifice B, C or D, right? So each time you make a choice, you also decide not to choose something, or you decide to give up something or sacrifice something, right? When I decide to write with a black pen, I decide not to write with a blue or a red one. When you decide to come into this program, you decide not to work at a job, correct? So that means for every decision, there is a sacrifice, and that sacrifice in economics is called the opportunity cost. The opportunity cost. Okay. So what is opportunity cost? Opportunity cost is basically whatever you give up to do something, whatever you sacrifice to do something. Let's say you have a test tomorrow and you have to study for the test. You know that you have to study for the test this evening, but you also have a party this evening. So if you decide to study for the test, of course you have a possibility of earning a better grade on the test tomorrow, but you also give up the entertainment that you could have had, the fun that you could have had by going to the party, correct? So your opportunity cost of studying would be the fun that you gave up at the party. Fine? Is it clear? Now opportunity cost is also sometimes called the implicit cost. Now besides the implicit cost, is there any other type of cost? Yes, of course. There is explicit cost, which is also sometimes called the accounting cost, and that kind of sets the difference between economists and accountants. Accountants are bothered about explicit cost only, whereas as economists, we focus more on this opportunity cost. We think this is the real cost, this is the true cost of something, whereas accountants think the explicit cost is the real cost of something. And what is this explicit cost? Explicit cost is the green paper that goes out of your pocket. It's the dollar bills that actually go out of your pocket. Do you see what I am saying? For example, when you sit in this classroom, you also have to pay some fees. You are paying high fees for this program, and you can calculate exactly for these 3 credit hours how much are you paying for these 1 hour 15 minutes. That is your explicit cost that actually went out of your pocket. The salary that you gave up at your job that could have come into your pocket, you have sacrificed that, but that did not go out from your pocket. But this is something that is actually going out from your pocket. Do you see the difference between the two? So one is a sacrifice, whereas the other is a real expenditure. Fine? Now we in the economics class, we will, whenever we talk about cost, we are most probably talking about this, the opportunity cost, okay, because we think this is the important one, right? Now, so to take a decision, you have an opportunity cost. That means whenever you are taking a decision in your mind, whenever you are choosing something, what are you doing? You are basically doing a cost benefit analysis. That means you are weighing what are the gains or the benefits from that decision versus the cost of that decision. And mind you, the cost is that I am talking about here is the opportunity cost. That means you are thinking what can I gain versus what do I have to give up. Probably all of you did that when you came into this program. It was not, a one-night decision. You thought about it. What will I gain after these 3 years in this program? And what will I have to give up during these 3 years, right? And that's obvious for all of us. And we do it for every big or small decision in our life, every time. Even something as small as studying for a quiz. If I put in 1 hour studying for the quiz, I am also thinking in my mind, okay, what is the benefit of making an A in the quiz tomorrow versus what is the cost of this 1 hour? Maybe I could have spent this 1 hour with my sick child. That's a cost. That's a sacrifice that I am doing. Do you see? So, always it is a cost benefit analysis before taking a decision. But in economics, we do not look at the overall cost and benefit. Rather, this cost benefit analysis or this decision making process happens at the margin. It's a marginal analysis. What do I mean by that? Marginal analysis. Marginal analysis means that we are asking ourselves the question how much. We are trying to answer the question how much, and we are asking that question for every additional unit of a commodity. What do I mean by that? I mean, how much will I benefit by putting 1 additional hour of study, or what is my cost going to be for 1 additional hour of studying. In this case, the 1 additional hour is a 1 unit of time. Similarly, it could have been some commodity. How much will I gain by consuming 1 additional candy, or what is my cost of consuming 1 additional candy? The gain could be the satisfaction. Okay, I have a sweet tooth, I love eating candy. The cost could be the weight that I put on, the calories that I gain, right? Yes? So, always in economics, we are doing a marginal analysis in the sense that we are thinking about cost and benefit, but we are not thinking about overall cost and benefit. Rather, we are thinking about the benefits and the cost that is going to accrue for every additional unit of the commodity. And when I say commodity, it could also be time, okay, not necessarily always a physical good. Okay, fine. Do you have any questions up to this point? Okay. So, that means I will end up taking a decision based on this marginal analysis. I will end up taking a decision when my marginal benefit is greater than marginal cost, I will take the decision, and when the cost is higher, I will end up not taking the decision, isn't it? That is rational because we assumed crazy people away. On day 1, we said no crazy people in economics, all rational economic agents. So, if you are a rational person, if your benefit is more, you end up doing it. If your cost is more, you won't do it, as simple as that. So, that means what is the critical point? The critical point that means is marginal benefit is equal to marginal cost. That is a critical point. When the imbalance is created at that critical point, if one side becomes higher, you either take the decision. If the other side becomes higher, you do not take the decision. Is that clear? Fine. Now, I am going to digress a little bit. Now, this is something you will not see in your lecture note, but it will come later on. But I want to give you a little bit of introduction into it since we are talking about marginal benefit and marginal cost. Now, think about marginal benefit. Let me give you an example. Let's say you have done 1 hour of cardio. Okay, and you are extremely exhausted. Now, if you are like me, you will be exhausted in 10 minutes, but let us say 1 hour. You have done 1 hour of cardio, you are extremely exhausted, you come back, now you want a bottle of water, you are extremely thirsty, you are tired, you want a bottle of water. So, the benefit that you get from that first bottle of water, is it going to be super high or super low? Super high, because you need that bottle of water at that very point in time, it is going to be super high. Now, after drinking that first bottle of water, your thirst is quenched, but you are still somewhat thirsty. So, you go for the second bottle. So, you get some benefit from that second bottle because it quenches your thirst even more. But is this benefit going to be higher or lower than the first bottle? Lower, right? Because you are not as thirsty when you take the second bottle. Then you go for the third one. For the third one, the benefit is going to be even lower. And for the fourth one, the benefit is going to be further lower. That means when you keep consuming more and more and more and more of a commodity, the benefit goes down with every additional unit, right? And what is that benefit of every additional unit? The marginal benefit, MB. That is exactly the definition of marginal benefit, right? The benefit that you get from every additional unit of the commodity, right? So that means when I say that your benefit goes down over time as you consume more and more and more and more of the commodity, I am trying to say that your marginal benefit goes down for every additional unit of the commodity, right? All of you will agree. That is precisely the reason I tell you, do not overstudy. If you study for 1 hour, if you do it sincerely, you will have maximum benefit. You do the second hour, you still have some benefit, but it's going to be less than the first hour. And if you keep on doing 10 hours the night before the exam, there will be a point where it is zero benefit. You're not gaining any more. Do you see? So now, and all this is a digression, you won't find in the lecture note, but we are talking about it because we will need it later. How many of you have seen this somewhere? X-axis and y-axis, a two-dimensional graph. Is there anybody who has never seen this ever in your life, a two-dimensional graph? You have a x-axis, you have a y-axis, there is a x point, there is a y point, you can plot that point. Everyone has seen that? Okay. So let this be a two-dimensional graph where I am measuring quantity on the x-axis. Quantity means number of water bottles from the example that I just gave you. And then I am measuring marginal benefit and marginal cost here, okay, on the y-axis. So that means if I just kind of try to plot what I just told you intuitively, what would it mean? It would mean from the first bottle of water, I have maximum benefit. From the second bottle of water, my benefit will be lower than the first. Third bottle, even lower. Fourth bottle, lower. Yes? All of you agree? And if I try to plot a line, if I try to plot that relationship, then I am going to end up getting a line which is downward sloping, coming down, right? So that is nothing but the marginal benefit curve. Marginal benefit curve, okay? And whatever you see right now on that graph, and whatever I told you in the last 3 or 4 minutes intuitively about marginal benefit, that is known as law of diminishing marginal benefit. Law of diminishing marginal benefit. Simply means that as you consume every additional unit of the commodity, your benefit from it will go down. Clear, everyone? Now, on the same diagram, on that same graph, I can also plot the marginal cost. What do you think will happen to marginal cost? If you consume the first bottle of water, you are paying say $1, that is the explicit cost, and with that $1 that went out of your pocket, you could have probably bought a burger at McDonald's. You buy the second bottle, costs $2. Now, with $2, you have given up more than a burger, right? You have given up 2 burgers. Third bottle, $3, you have given up 3 burgers. Fourth bottle, $4, you have probably given up a small Chinese meal, right? Fifth bottle, you have given up more. So that means what is happening with the cost? With every additional unit, the marginal cost is going up because what you're sacrificing is going up. Do you see that? So that means if I plot the same relationship for cost, it's going to be the other way around. It's going to go up like that. Yes? And if I do the same thing, if I join those dots to find the relationship, then I'm going to get an upward sloping line, which is going to be my marginal cost. And please note that there will be one unique point where the marginal benefit and the marginal cost will intersect, and that is the point where marginal benefit is equal to marginal cost. the critical point that we were talking about. Now, if you have the decision if you are making the decision of whether you should consume the next bottle of water or not, you are weighing your benefit and cost. If your benefit is higher, at some point you are drinking that bottle of water, buying that bottle of water. If you think the cost is way too high, you let it go. You don't want to drink it. As simple as that. Okay? Now, so we said, okay, fine, great, this is the critical point. Benefit more, take the decision. Cost more, do not take the decision. Now, the next point is, could something be done? And let's call that, if this is 4A, let's kind of call that 4B, because it's kind of tied in together. Could something be done to change our position from the critical point? Let's say I'm at the critical point. Marginal benefit is exactly equal to the marginal cost, and hence I don't have a clear preference for whether I should buy it or not, whether I should go for that additional unit or not. Now, given at this point, is it possible for something to be done, or is it possible for something to change around me so that one of the two become higher, benefit becomes higher and I end up taking the decision, or cost becomes higher and I do not take the decision? Yes, it is possible. And that something is called incentive or penalty or disincentive. So, anything that raises the benefit or raises the marginal benefit is an incentive, and anything that would raise the marginal cost is a disincentive. Okay? And individuals respond to this incentive-disincentive mechanism. That means, given an incentive, people end up taking that decision. Given a disincentive, they do not take that decision. And the example I am giving you, this is not probably so much pertinent for you guys, because you have something additional on your head, that is, you have to be in this class. It's a required course for PhD students. But let's say if I was in a class teaching undergraduate students, okay, and I want everybody to come to class because I have certain benefits of teaching a full capacity class rather than an empty class. So, my decision is to teach a full capacity class. Now, to fulfill my decision, I have to do something to make the students come, because students are at their critical point of MB is equal to MC. They are can go, may not go, okay, doesn't matter, Gen Ed course. Okay. So, if I tell them that from tomorrow if you come to class you are going to get $100, whether they are interested or not, they will come sit in my class and fulfill my decision. So, to fulfill my decision, I am doing that, giving incentive, right, and people show up, because now their marginal benefit has become way more than their marginal cost, right. Similarly, I tell them I am not giving you $100, but if you do not show up in class, I will take away 20 points every time from your final score. Now, what am I doing? I am giving a disincentive or penalty, but fulfilling that same choice that I made, making students come to class, right. And usually rational individuals, non-crazy people, will respond to this incentive or disincentive mechanism. Okay. Now, will this incentive or disincentive mechanism always work, or can it backfire? What do you think? Mostly does. In a country, in macroeconomic sense, in the bigger picture, it mostly does. Otherwise, there would be no problems to solve, right. The fact that we have so many problems, especially macroeconomic problems, is because this mechanism sometimes does not work the way that the government would want it to work. It backfires. And here I will give you a small story, okay, digress a little bit and tell you how it backfires. And this is something I read in Freakonomics, which is a very nice book, and it's also available, the videos are also available on YouTube if you want to take a look. So, this is about a small village in India, okay, and this village was suddenly infested with poisonous snakes, lot of snakes and people dying of snake bites. So, the village authority thought that, okay, let's provide some incentive mechanism and tell people that if you catch snakes and bring them to the village administrative office, you are going to get a cash prize. So, that is an incentive, right, you get some award. So the village authority thought that these people are going to start captivating snakes and bringing them to the village office, and they're going to earn cash reward, and in no time there will be no snake problem, no poisonous snake problem in the village. But what happened? As soon as the people heard about this, they started catching snakes, and instead of bringing them first to the village office, they started breeding the snakes, because they thought we are going to take more snakes every time and get more cash prize. Okay? So the number of snakes in the village actually started increasing. So now the village authority got confused that, oh my God, what have we done? Let's do disincentive. Okay, incentive is not working. So they said, okay, fine, now you're not getting any cash reward. Rather, if we find you breeding snakes in your home, then you have to pay a fine. You have to come to the village office and pay a fine. People got scared that, oh my God, we are not getting any money, and we might have to pay a fine. They let the snakes off from their homes back into the village. So what happened? The problem got aggravated. Now you have more snakes in the village. So neither the incentive worked nor the disincentive worked. So most of the times that can happen. And that's why you do have these policy people and economists to solve the problem. If everything worked as you have in theory, we would not have any jobs. Okay? So that's about it. Now these 4 principles that we have on the board right now, these are called the principles of choice, because they are all related to this decision making process. It's called the principles of choice. Now beyond the principles of choice, or after the principles of choice, you have the next set of principles, which is called the principles of interaction. Principles of interaction. What does principles of interaction say? Principles of interaction says that, okay, every rational individual is making a choice, and by individual what we mean are economic agents. So they could be buyers or sellers with interchangeable roles. So these people are all interacting because they are not living in the jungle, right? We are all living in the society, so that means my choice is interacting with yours, hers is interacting with hers. So everybody, our choices are interacting, and even in the larger scheme of things, even in the economy, our choices are interacting. Now, if all of us tried to do everything, if all of us tried to kind of take a decision about everything, there would be a chaotic situation, right? With so much interaction. That means what is necessary through the interaction of choices is specialization. Specialization, sometimes also called trade, also called division of labor. That means everybody should not be doing everything, rather there should be specialization among people, among individuals in a society. I give you a group project, you have a group project at the end of the semester, 5 people in the group. At the end of say 1 week or 1 month, you have to come to class with a PowerPoint presentation. Now 5 of you, you're making a decision about how to make a good PowerPoint presentation. That's a common decision that you're making. Now everybody decides to do everything. What will happen? After 1 month there will be chaos, because there will be 5 PowerPoint presentations. Rather, what should you do? You have to sit down, interact your choices. One person says, okay, I'm going to do the research. 2 other people say, okay, we are going to come up with the bullet points. Third person says, I'm good with graphics. The fourth person says, I'm going to put the slides together, so that eventually you come up with one good final product. Similarly, in our family, everybody does not do everything. Somebody does cooking, somebody does laundry, somebody takes care of the kids, somebody is lawn mowing. Everybody does not do everything, right? So specialization is important. And even if you look at bigger scheme of things, that is the macro scheme of things, even the countries are doing that. For example, if you think about the world economy, USA is not producing every good that is there under the sun. USA gets so many goods from China, from Vietnam, from India, from Bangladesh. Similarly, smaller countries get so many goods from USA, right? So countries are trading all the time. That means they are specializing in their production, and usually they specialize according to their own strengths. For example, USA would probably, make medical devices and things like that, which require a lot of technology and research, things like that, because it's a rich country. Smaller countries would probably produce agricultural goods, or they would produce something like garments. You see, clothes coming from Vietnam, Philippines, Bangladesh all the time, flooded at Walmart. So every country is not doing everything. They are specializing, and then they are trading with each other. So that means this is what lies at the crux of international trade. Okay? We are not going to talk so much about international trade in this healthcare econ class, but you must understand that this is the principle that is working behind that. And it is just not working in the global economy, it's working in your day-to-day life also. Specialization is working. But why would people specialize? Why would people be ready to specialize? Because it has some gains. There are benefits from it. And that is basically called the gains from trade or gains from specialization. So when people have interaction of choices, it leads to specialization, and specialization usually will lead to mutually beneficial gains for the people. Is that okay? Now the next principle, so this is the fifth one. The sixth one says, where will this interaction take place? Where does the interaction take place? Where do people interact? Okay, is there a special name for it? Yes. In economics, we consider that there is an institution where this interaction of economic agents would take place, and this institution is called the market. So market is basically a place or an institution where the economic agents come and their choices interact. And who are these economic agents? Remember, these economic agents are divided into two categories, buyers and sellers. So market is an institution where buyers and sellers interact. Buyers will come with their decision of buying, sellers will come with their decision or choices of selling, and these will interact, and finally they will reach a point of agreement where buyers get what they want to buy, sellers sell what they want to sell, and that point of agreement is called an equilibrium point. Equilibrium, and that is denoted by capital E. So equilibrium, what is equilibrium? Equilibrium is nothing but the point of agreement between buyers and sellers. It is where they both have decided to settle the deal, buy and sell. And the objective of every market, the objective of every interaction between a buyer and a seller is to move towards this equilibrium. So the sixth principle is that markets will move towards equilibrium. Remember when I told you about free market? I said, what is the purpose of a free market? Free market, the purpose is there will be interactions in such a way between buyers and sellers that they are able to resolve their fight and reach a point of agreement. Now you have a name for that point of agreement, that is the equilibrium. And usually all markets will try to move towards that point of equilibrium. Okay? Now can markets fail? Means, is it possible that markets are not able to reach a point of agreement by themselves? Yes. And that would be called market failure, like I told you. And whenever there is market failure, what will happen? What will happen if there is market failure? Government will step in. There will be government intervention. So whenever this does not happen, whenever this market does not move to an equilibrium, what you have is a market failure. And whenever there is a market failure, the government will go into the picture and try to settle things, government intervention. Now there may be several conditions under which a market failure takes place, okay? Different reasons for market failure. We will not go into those details of market failure. We might need one of those reasons, or actually two of those reasons later on, when we do the health insurance market. but we will keep that out of the picture for now to keep things less complicated. So, on your lecture note 1, you may see some 3 or 4 reasons given for market failure, something like externalities, public goods and things and so on and so forth, asymmetric information. Skip that part for now. Skip the reasons. You do not have to look at the reasons for now. We will come back to it when we need it. Okay. For now, you just know that if the market fails for whatever reason, the government steps into the picture and tries to settle things, tries to restore equilibrium in the market. Now, when the market goes to an equilibrium, when the market reaches an agreement, whether by itself or through government intervention, whatever the way may be, the resources in the market have been used in such a way, have been exploited in such a way that both these groups, the buyers and the sellers, are all happy. And this happiness, this state of happiness is also called efficiency. So, this state of happiness is also called efficiency. It basically means that the resources have been used in the market, all resources have been optimally exploited, so that everyone has not only agreed at a point, but they are also happy at that point. They are in a happy state. So, another word, technical word for this happiness is efficiency. Okay. Now, what is the formal definition? So, if everybody is happy, if at the efficiency point, if everybody is happy, what does that mean? If you try to move away from that point, if you try to move away from that efficiency point, what are you trying to do? You are probably trying to give a little more happiness to one of the groups, but you can only do that by making the other group somewhat unhappy. So, that means efficiency is a point where if you try to make one person better off, you will have to make the other person worse off. It is not possible to make both parties better, because all resources have been used optimally, and after it has been used, this state of happiness has been reached, this efficiency has been reached. Now, if you try to tamper with this point and try to give a little bit more happiness, a little bit more resources to one group, be it the buyers or the sellers, you obviously have to give less to the other person. Do you see what I am saying? Right? Now, I have $10 in my pocket, 10 $1 bills, and I have decided to give those $1 bills to 10 students sitting here. I walk in, the first 10 students who come to class, I will give them $1 bill each, and I have given that out. Now, I do not have anything. Now, one of those 10 students comes to me and says that I need an extra dollar because I have more need than the other person, and maybe that is true. Maybe that person is really needy, but to give you that extra dollar, I will have to take away a dollar from somebody else, because I do not have anything. I have used the resources that I had. Now, if I try to make you more happy, then I have to make the other person sad. Do you see what I am saying? Yes? Now, does it mean that efficiency is guaranteeing justice or equity? No. Probably equity, it would have been equitable or fair if I gave that dollar to the person who was needy, because maybe the other 9 people do not need that $1. They are probably keeping it in their pocket, but this person probably really needs that dollar to buy the next meal. But I am not doing that, I am just going for efficiency, right? I am not going for equity. Do you see what I am saying? So, efficiency does not mean justice or fairness or equity. They do not mean the same thing. So, now what are we doing? We are going to, under these principles, we are saying that okay, fine, choices of individuals interact and hence they specialize, the choices interact in the market, and then the market tries to move towards an equilibrium. At the equilibrium, usually markets will reach an efficient point. All that is done. Now we are kind of broadening the horizon and saying what happens in this whole country, in this whole economy, when everybody's choices interact with everybody else and there are so many markets all working at the same time, what happens? So that means the first two set of principles that I had, principles of choice and principles of interaction, those are something that we are going to focus more in this class, because that is kind of, that motivates microeconomics more. This is more into macroeconomics, but we will nevertheless, since this is, we are studying the principles, we will need this at some point in some sense, but we are going to focus more on the first 8 principles that you saw. Okay? These principles are more into macroeconomics. So what does this mean? The first principle says here, and that's why I am not continuing the numbering, because it's a little different than the others. So the first principle says that in an economy, in any economy, the expenditure made by one person is the income of another person. When you spend something, when a buyer spends something, it is the earning for the seller. So if you think about a micro thing, if you think about the small picture, a buyer's spending is a seller's earning, right? Now if you add up all the buyers in USA, their total spending is the total earning of all the sellers in USA, correct? So that means if I kind of try to summarize for this whole economy, then for this whole economy, someone's income is someone's earning, isn't it? That means in an economy, in a whole country, this income must be equal to expenditure for the whole country. And why did I put that strange sign? That is identically equal. Okay, that means the value may not, the dollar value may not be exactly equal, but conceptually they are equal. Okay, and you can just put a regular equal to sign also, doesn't matter, just technical. But the concept is, you understand the concept, right? If a buyer is spending, the seller is earning. If you add up all buyers of all markets, all sellers of all market, you get that whole economy. So that means for this whole economy, the total income that is generated in the economy is coming out of somebody's pocket. So that is the total expenditure made by this economy as a whole. Okay? Now can it so happen, is it possible that this expenditure of the economy is higher than the income of the economy? Can it happen? That the spending is more? Yes, that happens mostly. That is the reason governments have deficit, because they spend, the country spends more than what it earns, and that is the reason that I have that identical equality. Means the dollar value may not actually match, expenditure may be more, and whenever the expenditure is more, what you have is a deficit, and whenever you have a deficit, that means the country is spending more. Just like your family, if you have deficit, there has to be some way to manage the deficit. And what is that some way? You either have to bring down the spending, right? Or you have to get some loan from somewhere, or you just have to work another job, something to increase the income or to bring down the spending. Same for the government. And those are, that something which is done to manage this income and expenditure situation, that something is called macroeconomic policies. So macroeconomic policies are policies which the government has to take to manage this imbalance between income and expenditure that often arise in an economy, which is very common in any country. Okay? And any macroeconomic policy, the 3 main types of macroeconomic policy, either bring down the expenditure, bring down the total expenditure of the government, that means bring down. In this class, I will, whenever I say decrease, I will put that down arrow. Whenever I put increase, I will put the up arrow. Okay? So if I am putting a down arrow, I mean reduce or decrease. So decrease government's spending, country's spending, whatever the country is spending on health, on education, so on and so forth, defense, for United States big expenditure on defense, for public health insurance programs, social security, Medicare, Medicaid, bring it down, okay? Or generate more income, get more income. What is the source of income? Raise taxes. Taxes could be business taxes or personal income taxes, sales taxes, any form of taxes, right? Okay. So, I will stop today's class here. This is your lecture note 1. I may not have gone over lecture note 1 word for word, but I have given you a summary of what was there, and hopefully it will help you to understand the lecture better. Now, you will go and read lecture note 1 once again with this to make your understanding clear. And over the weekend, I am going to post your lecture note 2, and you are going to watch the next set of videos, which is I think 4.1, 4.2, 4.3, 4.4, everything about demand and supply. Demand, supply, demand shift, supply shift, okay, for next week. So, next week 2 classes we are going to devote to demand and supply. We are going to go into real microeconomics, okay, and you will have to understand the content of next week really well, because your course, this course is going to be based pretty much on that. If you understand that, this will become easy for you.